if you've ever spiked the punch at the Christmas office party, but you were the one that got hammered, then we need to talk. Ashley here from IMFC, and in today's video, we'll be discussing how does alcohol affect fat loss? And can you lose fat but still keep alcohol in your diet plan? And later on, I'll be sharing with you 3 of my top tips on how to include alcohol in the diet plan should you wish to. What the research says and strategies all coming up in today's video. Okay guys, welcome to today's video. Now, if you're new here and you're interested in learning more about nutrition, or you have questions about your own specific nutrition needs, then consider subscribing to this channel, because each week I'll be producing new videos where we talk about different topics of nutrition. So feel free to go ahead and drop me a message in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to answer any of your nutrition questions. So how does alcohol affect fat loss? Well, firstly, let's look at this study from Silver et al. 1999. Okay, so in this study, 8 healthy men were given 2 cocktails containing 40% vodka mixed with a diet lemonade. And this was taken orally, obviously, nice. Now, what they saw in this study, that with the alcohol ingestion, that carb oxidation, carb burning for fuel, was not significantly affected with the alcohol. But what they did see was that lipid oxidation, which is kind of a precursor for your fat burning, was in some cases reduced by up to 73% in some of the participants. So what are some of the reasons behind this reduction? Alcohol in the blood is toxic, and your body needs to prioritize getting rid of that toxic element from the bloodstream. So it does this by down-regulating one of the other ways it burns, which is lipid oxidation, to prioritize getting the toxic ethanol out of your blood system. Now, the key thing to remember on this one is that it's still 24-hour energy balance is critical. So in this study, they had once they had over 2 drinks, or at 2 drinks in this case, in some participants, the lipid oxidation was reduced by up to 73%. But that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be gaining fat, because calories in, calories out still matter in this situation. It's just that you can see that once you start getting over 2 drinks, 3, 4, 5, it's just going to take your body longer to metabolize and burn off that alcohol, therefore making the potential to store that alcohol as fat a little bit greater. And that's why the potential for alcohol consumption is there for fat gain. And if you think about the times of day in which we drink alcohol, or we're likely to drink more than a couple of drinks, it's usually going to be in the evening time. And if you're drinking 3, 4, 5, 6 drinks, up until nearly bedtime, and then you're going to sleep, and then your energy expenditure is reduced a little bit while you're sleeping. Again, it's going to take a lot longer to burn through and process that alcohol again, so making the potential for fat loss to be increased. So the next review we're going to look at is this review from Steiner in 2017. So Steiner 2017. Now whilst we can't cover everything in this review that highlights, because it's quite extensive, just some of the key points to pick out. So chronic alcohol consumption perturbs lipid metabolism as it increases adipose tissue lipolysis and leads to ectopic fat deposition within the liver. Now, this impaired lipid storage in adipose tissue may lead to fat deposition in the liver and other organs throughout the body. And it goes on to state that overall, both white adipose tissue and brown adipose tissue depots are affected by chronic alcohol intake. Okay, so a little bit of evidence there about the effects of potential chronic intake of alcohol on things like fatty liver disease. So again, we're looking at things like moderate alcohol consumption, maybe being the best option there, and chronic high levels of intake, binge drinking over the long period, leading to potential negative health impact. Okay, so I already mentioned about we usually drink more volume of alcohol in kind of evening times, social situations, nights out, whatever. And this study from Yeomans 2010 looked at how alcohol intake can affect your appetite. Okay, so here's the study. Now, in this study, they saw that there was a short-term passive increase in food intake following alcohol intake. Now, if you add that to the fact that alcohol already contains quite a high amount of calories, 7 calories per gram, and it has a kind of a stimulating effect on your appetite, and you're drinking late at night, and inhibitions are lowered, you can see that if you put all that together, that could be a nice cocktail for leading to some potential fat gain. Now, it's a bit beyond the scope of this video to cover all of the impacts that alcohol might have on the body, but just a few there that we mentioned on fat burning and appetite, which may contribute to the potential to gain fat. Now, it's worth noting that along with the other things we just mentioned, that large amounts of alcohol intake are going to have effects on the sleep quality, mood, and training performance and recovery. So if fat loss is a goal or performance is a goal, then large amounts of alcohol intake are really going to negatively impact that. And now there is a bit of research on small amounts of alcohol actually having some positive health benefits on things like reducing stress and HDL cholesterol from things like the phenols in red wine, as an example. But the amount you would need from those phenols to actually have the kind of positive health benefits are probably going to be outweighed by the negatives of consuming larger amounts of alcohol to get those, in terms of calories, potential fat gain, and all those things. Now, does this mean that you can never have alcohol again? And even though after 2 drinks, we can see potential downregulation in lipid oxidation, no, your 24-hour energy balance is still going to be the key thing here. But what we really need to do is ask ourselves this very simple question: is how does this fit in with my goals at the time? Am I preparing for a marathon? Am I preparing for to be on stage for a competition or boxing match? Will alcohol be able to fit in with that goal and still get me to where I want to be? Now, if the answer to that question is no, then of course, there's no real need to be including alcohol in the diet plan, and potentially waiting until after you've kind of reached that goal or after you've done that competition or event to then maybe bring back a little bit of alcohol into the diet, if that's what you enjoy. On the other hand, if you are, you're not an elite athlete and, you're not trying to be a certain weight or fat percentage, you're just trying to be healthy and happy and kind of enjoy life, but still kind of keep the alcohol in, there is obviously room for it. You need to remember your 24-hour energy balance. Probably need to remember about being low to moderate on the alcohol intake. So, 1 or 2 drinks from the first day I mentioned is probably about where you want to be. If you don't want to negatively affect too much kind of your ability to burn carbs and burn fuel, burn fats. Okay, so let's say that you've decided that yes, you want to keep some amount of alcohol in your diet. You want that flexibility to, go to birthday parties, meet friends on the weekend, but still kind of, have some weight loss goals, still have some performance goals. So here are my 3 top tips on how you can do that. Okay, tip number 1. So plan ahead. Look at your week and see, how does your week look? Now, rather than drinking 1 or 2 drinks every night with dinner, potentially wait until the weekend, save 1 or 2 drinks for the weekend, allow yourself to have that fun there, but maybe keep Monday to Friday as more of a kind of a stricter approach, something a bit more focused on your goals. And on the weekend, keeping in mind that 1 or 2 drinks with dinner with friends is likely not going to undo all of the hard work you've done for the week. Okay, so that's tip number 1, kind of plan ahead. Look at your week and decide, okay, on this day, these couple of days, I'm more than likely going to want to have a couple of drinks. So kind of waiting, telling yourself, okay, I'm going to be good for the few days before, and then I'm going to stick to just a couple of drinks in that time where I choose to drink. And therefore, that's going to keep me, kind of hit my goals, keep me on track, but still allow that little bit of flexibility that you want. Okay, so before we do tip number 2, if you're getting any value from this video, if you're taking anything away from this that you feel you can kind of apply to yourself, then go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and tip number 2 coming up. Okay, so on to tip number 2. I call this the one on, one off rule. Okay, so it's pretty simple. It's, one drink, alcoholic drink, followed by one soft drink, followed by alcoholic drink, followed by soft drink. So one on, one off. Now, pretty simple. It's just a way to space out the amount of alcohol you have in a given time with intermittent soft drinks. So a good example of this is, let's say you enjoyed a gin and tonic as an example. Kicking off with a bit of gin and tonic. Next drink, followed up with something like a soda water with lemon and lime as an example. And then have that one, then back onto a gin and tonic. Now, over the course of a couple of hours, you've had maybe 2 alcoholic drinks, 2 soft drinks. Again, still kind of under or around that kind of 1 to 2 drinks where we don't get so much downregulation of lipid oxidation, and still you're still keeping in the alcohol, you're still having fun, but it just again spreads out the total amount of alcohol you're consuming in a time. Again, reducing the calories, reducing some of the possible negative effects that over consuming alcohol in an evening might bring. Now, before I get into tip number 3, which is my personal top tip for including alcohol in your diet plan, I want to ask you guys a question first. What fitness and nutrition goals are you currently working towards? Are you trying to lose fat, trying to lose weight? Do you have some performance goals, trying to build muscle? Do you have an event that's coming up? If you have any of these kind of goals or any other different goal, then please go ahead and drop me a message in the comments. Let's get some discussion going. I'm really interested to know what you guys are kind of working towards, what your kind of goals are. Always nice to get some ideas for future posts, just so I can bring you some better content and some more specific content for things that you're actually working towards. So go ahead, let me know in the comment section. Let's get some dialogue going, and I'll try and answer some of those questions. Okay, on to my tip number 3, which is my personal top tip, and that is the lower calorie swaps. And now this is a great one, and I'm going to do a more kind of in-depth video about lower calorie swaps. So consider subscribing so you don't miss out on that one. But essentially what it's about, looking at the kind of alcohol you drink normally and seeing where we can make lower calorie swap alternatives. Now, a great example of this I mentioned already was the gin and tonic. Pretty simple. If you're drinking, gin and normal tonic, or a gin and a mixer, cranberry juice or orange juice. Again, a little bit more calories than a gin and diet tonic. Now, it's still the same alcohol content, but you are reducing the overall calorie content, which again is going to be a major player in your 24-hour energy balance and potentially what might be leading to some potential fat gain if you're drinking a number of drinks in an evening. Now, 7 calories per gram in alcohol, but also when you add into it, things like fruit juices and the processing, think about things like sweet ciders, sweet red wines, bottled alcohol pops. Cocktails are a great example. You've got the sugar, you've got the sweet, you've got the alcohol, maybe different alcohols. You can see how the calorie content of some drinks can go really, really high, really, really quickly. So looking at lower calorie alternatives, again, still the same kind of alcohol content from a gin and tonic to a gin and slim, but reducing that calories overall is going to help with some weight management. So by swapping in these lower calorie alternatives, and I do this all myself for me and for clients, it's just a great way just to reduce your calories. If you're working towards a specific goal, fat loss, muscle building, it's just a great way to add in or keep in, should I say, some alcohol in the diet, give you some of that flexibility, which ultimately will probably help you stay on track, stay focused with your diet plan or on your nutrition plan. So just a good thing to implement. So lower calorie swaps, my top tip. Okay, so there you have it. So just as a kind of recap and summarize some of the things we ran over. So alcohol, whilst yes, it does potentially lead to some fat gain when you go to the chronic levels, things like increasing appetite, decreasing satiety, decreasing inhibition, the potential for the overconsumption of calorie-dense foods. Inherently, it's not fattening. if you stay within your 24-hour energy balance. And again, that's the kind of, again, a key message here is that you can include some alcohol, just make it part of the plan, look at the days where you want to have it, but don't get too crazy, always drink responsibly. That being said, 1 or 2 drinks, if you're healthy, if you're exercising, if you're doing all those other things, it's likely not going to have any kind of negative impacts on you. But once you start going over those couple of drinks, that's where we see things like, things like fatty liver, lipid things happening there. So just be wary that, once you get into those chronic intakes, above the kind of low to moderate, bad things start to happen. Again, alcohol's toxic in the body, so your body is going to prioritize burning that first over fats if you're drinking, more than a few drinks in an evening or in a day. So just keep that in mind. Okay, but that's all from me for now. So from me, for now, goodbye, and I'll see you next video.